Palantir stock is flirting with the $20 range. After hours, the stock is absolutely soaring. The main reason the stock is soaring is because they reported earnings after hours. And as you could probably tell based on the market reaction, it was a record quarter for Palantir on many fronts. And there's a few things that we got to talk about that are leading Wall Street to pick up so many shares after hours. I'm super excited to get into this one, but two things real quick. Number one, if you're a Palantir shareholder out there, congratulations to you. After hours today, your portfolios are probably looking really, really good. And tomorrow is probably going to be the same situation. So congratulations to you, any fellow Palantir shareholders out there. Second thing, I don't talk about it too much on the channel, but if you're interested in joining the stock market community on the Patreon, I'll be posting a Q&A in there real soon. Just posted my February watch list. Go ahead and join us. That's the first link down there in the description. All right, before we jump into these earnings numbers, if you're new here, I'm Austin. I'm a co-owner of cloudbusinessweek.com. I'm a stock market investor, and definitely most importantly for this video, I'm a Palantir shareholder. I've been a Palantir shareholder for multiple years now. It's been a wild ride. Lots of ups, lots of downs, and never a dull moment as a Palantir shareholder. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, click that subscribe button, help us get to 3,000 subscribers, and drop a like while you're at it. Means a lot to me. Appreciate you doing that. Okay, let's jump into it. Why is Palantir soaring over 18% right now as of recording this video? It's because they reported earnings and they beat on many, many numbers. And across the board, they just delivered a very, very solid quarter, proving that they're not only a revenue growth company, but they're also a net income and operating income growth story for the next many years. This is exactly what I thought was going to happen with Palantir. I made a video about how I thought one specific metric could make the stock soar if they meet numbers or beat numbers on it. They happen to beat numbers on that thing. We'll talk about it in a little bit. And I said they're definitely going to have beastly net income numbers still. They're definitely going to have beastly operating income numbers still. And those net income and operating income numbers are going to be expanding quarter in and quarter out, especially in Q4, which is the quarter they just reported. We got a lot to get into. Let's get into the headline numbers first. Q4 of 2023, GAAP net income of $93 million, representing a 15% net margin. That represents the fifth quarter straight of GAAP net income profitability. When we look at one quarter ago, $72 million of net income, representing a 13% margin. So we've had a 2% margin expansion and a $21 million increase in net income on a sequential basis, meaning quarter over quarter. Even more impressive and even more important, fourth consecutive quarter of GAAP operating income profitability of $66 million in Q4, representing an 11% margin. That's up from $40 million in Q3 of 2023, and they had a 7% margin in Q3 of 2023. So the operating margin is up 4% on a sequential basis. Very, very impressive. That's exactly what we thought we would see. We'll look more at the net income numbers and how much is coming from net interest income and how much is coming from operating income here in a little bit. You can do a little simple math to figure that out right now, but if you don't want to, we'll hit it here in just a sec. The short story of this is it's really hard to say that Palantir is just a net interest income company. That's the only reason they're GAAP profitable. That's not even true. $66 million of GAAP operating income, even if they had no net interest income whatsoever at all, that alone would make them profitable. So in Q4, that GAAP net income led to 4 cents of GAAP EPS, and adjusted EPS was double that at 8 cents a share. As it relates to profitability, Palantir is firing on all cylinders. They're doing a great job of scaling that profitability massively. Those operating income numbers are up over 50% on a 1 quarter basis. That's the same time that revenue is increasing by 9%. GAAP operating income is increasing by over 50%. Ridiculous. That's what I'm talking about. And it is certainly a sign that the company is getting much, much stronger fundamentally, not just year over year, but literally 1 quarter to the next. A 50% rise in operating income is ridiculous. And now let's get to that big item that I was talking about in the video I posted just 3 days ago. If you saw that, I was talking about how if they miss on revenue numbers, the stock price is going to crumble. And if they beat on revenues, the stock price is probably going to soar. That's what happened. They beat on revenue numbers. Analyst expectations were somewhere around high 18%. I expected 19%, a slight beat. They were all the way up to 20% on a year-over-year basis and 9% on a quarter-over-quarter basis comparing to Q3 of 2023. The last time Palantir's revenue growth was in the 20s was all the way back in Q3 of 2022 at a 21.86%. And then we had multiple quarters, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters in a row of sub 20% revenue growth, going all the way as low as 12.75% revenue growth. Now we're re-accelerating back into the 20s. Very impressive and honestly needed for Palantir's growth story to stay intact. Much of that 20% year-over-year revenue growth number was driven by the U.S. commercial growth. Check it out. U.S. commercial revenue grew 70% on a year-over-year basis, and that means it was 12% on a quarter-over-quarter basis, just comparing to 1 quarter ago. And even better than that, commercial customer count actually grew by less than the revenue, which is a good thing. That means the contract values are increasing faster than they're acquiring customers. Customer count growth of 55% year-over-year is crazy, but 70% U.S. commercial growth on the revenue side is even more ridiculous. To speak more on that, U.S. commercial total contract value is all the way up to $343 million, which is 107% up on a year-over-year basis. Total commercial revenue, which includes the whole world, was up 32% year-over-year, and government revenue was up 11% on a year-over-year basis. So commercial revenue is now at $284 million. Government revenue is up to $324 million. I'm looking forward to the day that Palantir eclipses the government revenue, and I don't think it's long until that commercial revenue number is actually higher than the government revenue number. I think that's going to be big for Palantir. And really quickly, full year 2023, just to kind of see a year in review, revenue was up 17%, total commercial revenue was up 20%, US commercial revenue was up 36%, government revenue was up a nice 14%. It's hard to grow that government revenue really fast. That 14% is actually a very respectable number. Net income for the full year of $210 million. GAAP income from operations of $120 million. Cash from operations of $712 million. Adjusted free cash flow is $731 million. And adjusted income from operations of $633 million. This was a huge year for Palantir. They flipped from money loser to money maker. While their revenue growth numbers were dropping all the way into the low teens for some quarters, they were still able to achieve their goals of GAAP net income every single quarter throughout 2023 and GAAP operating income every single quarter throughout 2023. It's very impressive that even though their revenue was not a strong point for them, the management team was able to run the business well enough that even though that was happening, they were able to hit those net income and operating income numbers every single quarter. To speak more on that profitability front, let's go to the guide for full year of 2024. GAAP net income each quarter of this year, GAAP operating income each quarter of this year, adjusted free cash flow of somewhere between $800 million and $1 billion, adjusted income from operations of $834 to $850 million, U.S. commercial revenue growth, check this out, in excess of $640 million, which would represent a growth rate of at least 40%. That is crazy because I want to talk about this next number. The revenue guide, $2.652 to $2.668 billion. That would only represent about 20% revenue growth when we compare full year 23 to full year 24. I would like to see that like 22, 23, maybe even as high as 25%. And I think they can do it. And I think they might be sandbagging these numbers a little bit. That's definitely going to be led in a major way by the U.S. commercial revenue growth. When they say at least 40%, I think they fully intend on knocking that number out of the park and absolutely crushing that 40% guide on the U.S. commercial revenue growth side. Palantir has figured out that Wall Street really wants a company that not only meets expectations, but beats expectations literally every single quarter. That's what some of the most powerful companies in the world do, some of the most respected stocks in the stock market. They sandbag the numbers just a little bit so they can come in and beat numbers every single quarter. Don't be surprised if we get our quarters Q1, 2, 3, and 4 of 2024 and they slowly increase the guide for full year 2024 revenue. If myself and many others are right that 2023 was the year of AI hardware and 2024 is the year of AI software growth, then we really need to see Palantir above 20% solidly, not just barely edging on 20% revenue growth. I really want to see a 25% revenue growth number. I think it's very possible Palantir has to keep on firing on all cylinders and not slow down. I want to hit a few nitty-gritty things from the report. I'm not going to bore you with all the dense details, but a few things I want to bring your attention to that I think are extremely important. Sales and marketing and R&D costs are rising along with revenue. I am totally okay with that. In order for Palantir to stay on the cutting edge, they need to be spending on R&D, and in order for Palantir to procure more and more U.S. commercial customers, they need to be spending on sales and marketing. In order to offset those costs so they can become more and more profitable on a quarterly basis, their general and administrative expenses are dropping off a cliff. Typically, we see G&A expenses rising quarter over quarter with many companies in the stock market. Palantir is bringing those G&A expenses down. I love to see that. Let's keep that up. Next thing I think is important to look at, the income from operations numbers have eclipsed the net interest income numbers in a major way. Over $20 million more of operating income than interest income. The interest income is still very high at $44.5 million. If the Fed is going to start lowering rates, that is going to hurt their interest income numbers in a minor way, and it's going to hurt their net income numbers in a minor way. But since that operating income is skyrocketing so fast, over a 50% rise on a sequential basis, I'm really not worried about it at all, in conjunction with the fact that the Fed is probably going to stay higher for longer because we're getting strong jobs data, and the Fed came out and said the March rate cut is probably off the table. So it's really a non-issue for a little while for two reasons. One, operating income is skyrocketing. Two, we're probably going to keep rates higher for longer. Another thing Palantir is doing a good job of is decreasing the amount of dilution, okay? On a yearly basis, full year 2022, $564 million of total stock-based compensation. Full year 2023, roughly $476 million of stock-based compensation. We like to see that decreasing. I want to continue to see that decrease or stabilize. As we know, one of the issues with stock-based compensation, it dilutes current shareholder equity. It's important for a company like Palantir to keep their employees happy and basically keep the vision alive of Palantir becoming one of the best companies in the world to retain the best talent in the world. If they gift them stock and they tell them basically, if you make the best products in the world, this stock that we're gifting you is going to make you financially free someday, they have a lot of incentive to stay with that company, stay through the vesting period of their RSUs. We know that Palantir has one of the best balance sheets out there, and it just got even stronger when we look on a year-over-year basis. 2022 year-end, $3.46 billion of total assets. Year-end 2023, $4.52 billion of total assets, a 1.1 or so billion dollar increase on a year-over-year basis. And now I want to just rapid fire a bunch of margin numbers. We're comparing full year 2022 to full year 2023 for all of these. Adjusted operating margin up 6% from 22% all the way up to 28%. Adjusted free cash flow margin from 11%, a 3x up to 33% in a 1-year span. Adjusted EBITDA margin up 7% from 23% up to 30%. And then adjusted earnings per share of more than a 4x from 6 cents in full year 2022 to 25 cents in 2023, and that's on a per share basis, obviously. Summary of these earnings: the growth story is intact with Palantir, the profitability story is intact with Palantir, the balance sheet's still absolutely ridiculous, the company is becoming more and more fundamentally strong every single quarter, quarter in and quarter out. I'm a happy Palantir shareholder. I'm very excited to be in the stock for at least the next 5 years, if not much more than that. I think the story's only going to keep improving throughout 2024 as it relates to the revenue growth, and Palantir shareholders are going to be rewarded very nicely in terms of the share price as we move through 2024. A question that might be on everyone's mind: when is S&P 500 inclusion happening? I think the talks are going to start to ramp up for that throughout the rest of Q1 and in Q2 of 2024, and we could potentially see it as early as Q3 of 2024 or Q4 of 2024. I don't know. The S&P committee is sometimes a little finicky around companies like Palantir that are kind of a little controversial. Think about Tesla. It took a long time. They got snubbed multiple times from S&P 500 inclusion, even though they met every single criteria for multiple quarters. So that same thing might happen with Palantir, but no matter what, once it's announced, there's going to be a massive run up to the day that the inclusion actually happens, and then there's going to be a nice floor underneath Palantir as they get included in the S&P 500. We'll see how it all plays out, but that's my view, somewhere around Q3 or Q4 of 2024. Let me know what you're doing with Palantir in the comment section below. I want to hear if you bought more today, if you're selling, are you going to buy more tomorrow? What's the plan? Did you have any option plays around Palantir? Did it play out exactly how you thought it was going to, or was it even better than you thought it was going to be? I want to hear your take on Palantir in the comments below. One of my favorite parts of posting here on YouTube is checking out those comments, having conversations with you guys down there. I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.